Okay, so let's start. My name is Yiming Chen, and I'm from OriginLab technical support team. This afternoon, I'm going to share with you some tips in batch plotting in Origin. Hopefully, it will be helpful for you in your daily work. And before starting, I am just going to show you some of our webinars, upcoming webinars. So we are now doing weekly webinars, and if you go to our webpage and click this upcoming webinars, and you can click here to register for upcoming webinars. So today's webinar is like importing data and batch plotting, and you should see a list of the webinars here. So for example, like the batch analysis webinar next week. So in today's webinar, I'm going to do a lot of like batch processing and batch plotting, but you want to know more about batch analysis, please just come back next week. So I'm pretty sure it will be very helpful for you. And during the webinar, if you have any questions, just put on the Q&A panel, and my colleague will help to ask the questions. And also at the end of this webinar, we still have a poll, and we asking for your feedback and suggestions. We really appreciate it. Okay, so now let's start. So in this webinar, I'm going to cover these topics. So first, I'm going to introduce some of the tips of a batch graphing customization. So when you have like multiple layers in one graph, or when you have multiple graph pages, you would like to customize the formatting of the graph in a batch. So I'm gonna show you some tips how to do that. And in the next topic is the batch graph plotting. I'm going to show you some tips how to make a graphs in a batch. So you may have some data files, and you want to put those files into Origin and make graphs. And even you have some analysis template. So in Origin, then you want to import your data into the template and do some analysis and making graphs. We can also automate that process. Okay, and the last topic I'm going to show you the batch graph exportation. There are multiple ways like to dump graphs from Origin to other softwares or export graphs. And I'm also going to show you one example of export graph during the batch processing. Okay, so now let's start from the first example. Common display. So sometimes you have like a graph like this. You have 4 layers of graph within one graph page. So if you make some changes to the graph format, for example, if I change the axis tick label font size, it won't affect other graphs, right? And but sometimes you want to all the layers, the format changes altogether. So here I'm going to show you the common display setting. So if you double click on the graph and go to the plot details dialog, and you select the graph 3, which is the page level settings, and you come to this layers tab, and you will see this common display node. So what this does is, if you check these boxes, which corresponds to the properties of graphs, like the layer properties, which is like the background of the layer, and the plot properties, like the color of the curves in this case, or the like thickness of the lines, and the axis styles, so like the tick labels, font, things like that. These settings, if I check the boxes here and just click apply, and we'll see if I change the format of one layer, it will affect all the other layers. For example, if I change the font size, and you will see the font size will change across the layers. And I will, if for example, if I change the color list, I can use this minibar to change the color list. You'll see the format of all the layers are changed together. Okay. So this is a very easy way to customize your graph altogether. Sometimes when people do the graph merging, and these settings are turned on automatically. So just to let you know that if you want to customize individual graphs, you have to turn off those settings in that page level common display setting. Okay. Another thing I'm going to show you is, although this is a very nice tool to customize the format of all layers, but there's something which is cannot be controlled by this setting. For example, if I resize the graph, okay, you will see the size of the other layers doesn't change with the first layer. So what if I want the other 3 layers also resized and repositioned? Okay, just to keep the same graph patterns in the page. So here are another thing we can do. Okay, so if I go to the layer level, okay, this is the layer level settings. If I go to the link axis scales. So first step, I'm going to link the other 3 layers to the first layer. Okay, let's do this one by one. So I simply link all the other 3 layers to layer 1. This is the first step. Then I go to this size tab. So right now, the size of each layer is measured based on the percentage of the page. Okay, so I'm going to change the units to percentage of linked layer. Okay, I repeat that for all 3 layers. What this setting does is that if I set the units to the percentage of the linked layer, then the size and the position of each layer are linked to the first layer. Okay, let's see how to do. Right now, if I then resize the first layer, it will affect all other 3 layers. Okay. This is another feature, and also there are some. If you take a look, there are some text objects in the graph, like these text. Also, if I change the size of this object, it won't affect other layers. So what if I want to also like the set these text objects all together in a graph page? Here I'm going to introduce you an app called Font Changer. So Origin has more than 100 apps. So to obtain those apps, you can simply go to this apps panel and click the Add Apps button. It will list all the apps, and you can select different categories, and find the apps that you want. You can simply click this download button to download the app. Okay, so all these apps listed in the apps panel are that's pre-installed. So let's see what this font changer does. Okay, so this in this dialog we have multiple options. So for example, I can change the tick labels altogether. And let's just give it a value. And you will see the tick labels font size are changed. So in this case, I'm going to change 2 things, the legends and all other text objects. So legends and the text objects. You will see the size of the fonts are all changed together. Okay, once you, this may be too large, and I make it smaller. Okay, so once you are satisfied with the setting, then you can click the create to create a new graph. So the nice thing is it won't affect your original graph. It will just simply make a new graph with the format you are aiming at. Okay. Okay, now let's go to our next example, theme preview. So in last example, I showed you how to customize format of all the layers within one graph. So in this example, we have multiple graphs. We have 4 graphs. So we can't use that page level setting to adjust the format because right now they are in different graphs. But in Origin, we have this theme concept. So theme is kind of like a group of settings of the formats in a graph. So like every element in a graph, it has format. So let me first change of some of the format of the element. I guess like for example, if I change the color list, okay, and maybe I will make this text label a little bit smaller, okay, and the tick label as well. I'll make it a little bit larger. Okay. Also, I can, for example, move the legends to some other places. Okay. So in Origin, if you want to change the format of the, for example, second graph based on the format of the first graph, I can right-click. For example, I want to change the column color. I simply right-click on the plot and click Copy Format, and I go to the second graph, and again I click on the columns and right-click, and I can paste the format to, let's say, I want to copy all the formats. So you will see the color is changed. Also, every element, like the tick labels, right-click, copy format, and paste the format to the y-axis tick labels, right? And also the top one. Okay, so this way the format of each element on the graph can be changed individually. So what if I want to say, for example, let me also change the background of this layer. Okay. So what if I want to copy this format of this page and paste that to all the other pages, all the other graphs? Okay, again, instead of select individual element, I right-click on the page, the white space here, and copy format. Let's say copy all, and I can still right-click on this, and here we have this paste format advanced. It will open this dialog. Okay. So once I copy the format, it is saved in the clipboard. You can also save this format into a file, which we call it a theme file, and you can load the theme file later and apply to other graphs. Okay, so now I just use the format I just saved in the clipboard. Here I can, you see here is like a list of formats of what I have saved. I don't recommend you to create the format from scratch. Usually we just copy the format from a graph and make changes. Okay, so right now I can set the apply scope. Instead of active graph, I can select all graphs in this folder. Okay. Then let's see what happened. If I click apply, so you see the formats of the first graph is applied to all the other graphs. Okay. So this is very useful. I'm also going to show you another app called a theme preview. Okay, let's see how it does. Okay, if I choose a theme preview, you will see it gives you a preview of that graph. Okay, and you can select different themes from this list. So this is an axis theme. You can, when you mouse hover on each item, you will see how the preview is changed. Okay, so let's say if I go to the color scheme, okay, you see different color scheme. If I just choose one, and I can, instead of the current graph, I can apply to all graph in the folder, and click apply. So all the theme, the color theme of all graphs are changed. And also I can, let's say the legend, I can put the legend in different position. Okay, let's put it back and click apply. Okay, then all the, you see the legend are all put to the upper left. I just want to let you know one thing, that the themes can be combined. So I just applied two theme, and they are listed in this table. And you can save this combined theme into a file, a theme file. Okay. So once you saved a theme, then you can load it later for other plots. Okay. This is also very useful. Okay, now let's go to the next example. Fitted curve on multiple curves. Okay, so in this example, I have this four columns of y data, and I will first to plot them into different layers, because you notice that the y value ranges are different from columns to columns. So to present the data, I'm going to plot them into multiple panels. Okay, so yeah, if you check this plot type, there are multiple options to plot multiple panel graphs. You can play around with that. Let me just choose the multiple panels by type. So by default, I'm going to plot it as a scatter plot, and yeah, just leave it as it is. So it's like a 2x2 graph. And what I'm going to do is I want to add a fitted curve. I want to fit each layer with the Gaussian curve. Okay. So let me first make the change the symbol size and the symbol format a little bit. Okay. I can turn on the anti-aliasing to make it smoother. Okay, then I go to this gadgets. So if you attend some of our older webinars, you know that the gadgets are just small tools that applied on the graph. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to choose quick fit Gaussian. It will add this frame on the graph. Okay, so I want to apply this gadgets to all the other layers. So let me first do some settings. So I'm not going to generate label on the graph, so I just turn this off. And other things okay, let's see. So the report, I don't want the report. I just want to add a curve on the graph. Okay, let's see. Then I can click this button and say new output for all layers. This one, just click it. So the fitted curve is added to all the layers, see? And then now I can close this tool. And I can also adjust the format of this fitted curve altogether. And I can change this color. Okay. If you feel the text font size is too small, you can still use this font changer app to increase the font size. Let's say select all. Okay. Okay, then create a new graph. Okay. Okay, now let's go to next example. So so here is the data of the automobile. So I have like the automobile of different year and different make, and its performance are in the other 5 columns. So I'm going to, for example, I'm going to plot the engine displacement as a function of power for each year. But instead, other than just to make a scatter plot, I also want to add a fitted line to it. Okay, let's see how we can do that. We have this plot This let's see. Yeah, where's the graph maker? So this app is not installed. So let's see, graph maker. Let's see. Okay, so I need this app. So let me just install it. Okay. Okay, let me launch the graph maker tool. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to plot the engine displacement as y and the power as x. And I want to separate, like split the graphs based on the year. Okay, so I just drag a year to the vertical, to split the vertically. Okay, I want to add a polynomial curve on each layer, and I can set the polynomial order to 2, and I can also add a confidence band, prediction band, and if you click this button, you can also make further settings. Like I would like to put the equations on the graph, and you can change the transparency and the color. Okay, it's good. So once you make the settings, I just click OK to make the graph. Okay, so in this case, we have this multiple panel graph, which corresponds to each year's car, and we also have this fitted curve on top of the points. Okay, let's go to our next example. So now we go to the batch graph plotting. Okay, so in this case, I have a multiple worksheets. Each worksheet has the same data structure, and each one has like multiple XY data. So first, if I say I can make a plots with let's say first 5 Y values. If I make a line plot from this worksheet, then I want to duplicate this graph for other worksheets. So how can I do that? And before if I do this duplication, I just want to change the legend. So to distinguish the curves more clearly. So let's say I want to update legends, and I will set it to custom for the legends mode. Right now it shows the long name of each column. I want to put also the worksheet name to the legends. Okay, I can click here, and here is a sheet display name. Okay, let me just put it forward. Okay, now you can see the legend shows the worksheet name and the column long name. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to do the duplication. Here, if I right click on the title bar of the graph and select duplicate batch plotting, it will open this dialog. You can batch plot with the other sheets in this case. So I will select sheet in this case. And I'm going to just use the next 3 worksheets, step 2, step 3, and step 4. So that corresponds to these 3 worksheets. And I want to plot the selected 2 into individual graphs. So it will create new graphs with the data from the new worksheets. Okay, click OK. So what we see is I just duplicate the same graph with the other worksheet. You can tell from the legends. So this is from step 1 worksheet. This is from step 4 worksheet. Okay. Now I can just merge these 4 graphs together. Okay. In this case, I'm going to do merge them into a 2 by 2 matrix. Let's see, graph active or in active folder. Okay. So I just don't want the original graph, so I can just uncheck this I don't want to keep the source graph. Okay, let's click OK. Okay, now I make this 4x4 graph. Okay, now let's go to next example. I will show you one more more complicated scenario. So for example, I have this multiple sheets. Assume that I want to plot the first Y of each worksheet into one graph. Okay, then I plot the second column of each sheet into another graph, then have all them together. Okay, let's see how we can do that. So let's first select let's say the 4 Y columns, 4 XY data. Then I make the 4-panel plot. Okay. So right now each XY column are plotted into individual layers. Again, let me change the legend, update the legend, and custom. Like let's select the worksheet name and put the worksheet name at the beginning. Okay. Okay. Now let's do the duplication. Okay. So duplicate, and let's see. I will select all the other worksheets. Let's say just the next 5 worksheets. So in this example, instead of plot them to individual graphs, I will just plot the duplicated curves on the same graph, so onto the active graph. Click OK. What this does is it just overlaps the curves from other worksheet onto the same graph layers. You can tell that from the worksheet name of the legend. Okay. I can make some adjustment of the legend. Say I add a box on it, and I just copy the format of the legend and apply the format of the legend to all the other layers, all graphs, active graphs. Okay, so all the legends are moved to the same position of each layer. Okay, yeah, if you just compare the 2 graphs I just made, you can tell the difference. Okay. Okay, this in this example, I just introduced different ways to duplicate graphs from a new worksheet. Let's go to next example. In this example, I'm going to show you that how to use the batch plotting app. So for this graph 5, it is plotted from one column of this worksheet. So if you simply select the plot, it will show which column it is plotted from. So here I'm going to use this batch plotting tool if I want to duplicate this graph for all other columns. Okay, let's see. So in this case, you can choose from the drop down here whether you want to use the existing graph as a template or you can use a saved template. Okay. So right now I'm just using existing graph. And in this case, I'm going to plot with new columns. Okay, let's see, plot with new columns. And you can select each column and show the preview of this graph. And you can also use the left and the right key button to navigate each column. And if you are satisfied, and you can select multiple columns and just click plot. It just duplicates this graph with the new columns in the same worksheet. Okay, this is one example I'm going to show you. Let's just minimize these graphs. Okay, next example I'm going to show is, so here is a very complicated graph. Okay, once user spend a lot of time to prepare a graph like this, so if they usually want to save it as a graph template. Okay, if I select on the graph, you will see different columns are involved in plotting this graph. So user usually want to copy this graph into a graph template. Okay. So let's say my template. So here we check this box called a clonable template. So when you check this box, then when you make a new graph with this template, you are not going to specify the columns to make the graph. It will just find the worksheet with the same data structure to make a new graph from this template. Okay. So this is useful when we want to use this graph a batch plotting tool. Okay, let's save this template. Let's see how we can duplicate this graph from other worksheets. So here I have a different worksheet, which also has the same structure as the first one. Let me click this batch plotting. So instead of plot from existing graph, I'm going to use a clonable template. Okay, then I will just choose my template. And it already shows a list of the other worksheets here. And you simply click the worksheet to see the preview, and click apply, click plot to make the plots. Okay. So I just want to mention that there is a difference between the graph template and the theme I just introduced in previous example. So the theme can be applied to different plot types. So for example, the same axis theme can be applied to like a scatter plot or like a column bar plot. It doesn't matter. But like a graph template usually can only be applied to like a same graph type. So it's like the graph template is specific to certain graph types. Okay. Let's go to our next example, batch plotting from data files. Okay, so in these examples, I have this worksheet, and some data is imported into this worksheet with some specific settings. Okay. Then I use the data to make this plot. So the next is if I have multiple files, I want to import those files into the same worksheet and generate graphs. Okay. Here I'm going to use this idea called a clone import. So what that does is when I use clone import, it will import other files using the same import settings of the current sheet. Okay. So to make a plot after the importation, I would like the graph to be a part of this worksheet. Okay, so to do that, I can embed the graph into the worksheet. There are multiple ways to embed the graphs. I can right-click on the Sheet tab and select Add Graphs as Sheets. So the graph is embedded in as a sheet. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so you can also embed the graph into the worksheet as a floating graph. So you can use the Add Graphs tab here. You can embed the graph as a floating graph. Okay, so in this case, I will just embed the graph as a new sheet. Then I'm going to use this clone import. So here's a clone import button. You can also click the data and select clone import. Okay. Let's go find the other data files. Let's come to import and export. So right now, the data f1 is, .dat is imported. And let's say I want to import the other two data files into the same worksheet. Okay, let's click OK. Okay, in this ASCII import dialog, make sure that the template name is not clone. So this means is the data will just import, the worksheet will just first to be duplicated, and the data will be imported into this duplicated worksheet with the same setting. Okay, let's click OK. So you see the data is imported into the same data structure in the worksheet, and it is plotted in the second sheet. Okay, so this is another way to do batch plotting from files, from data files. Okay, let's go to another more complicated example. So in this example, let's see first. Let's just check this template. So I have these three columns of data. So the C column is the measurements, and the A and B are the groups, so the person and the therapy period. Then I run a repeated ANOVA analysis on this data, and I generate these reports. And eventually, I make a plot from the results of the analysis. Okay. So if I come to the other worksheet, what I'm going to do is I want to import these three columns into this template, just to replace the measurement column, and generate new graphs. Okay. Okay. So if we do analysis in the data in the worksheet, it will generate these operations. In these operations, of analysis is saved in this workbook. Then we can save this workbook as an analysis template. So this analysis template can be used in the future to do batch processing. So if you have multiple data sets, or you can import it into the template, generate results, and like automatically. Okay, so let me first save this workbook as an analysis template. Save as analysis template. Okay, so let me put in the folder in a desktop called my template. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to use the batch processing. So if you want to know more about batch processing, please attend our webinar next week on batch analysis. So in this example, I will just touch that a little bit. Okay, so let's go to here, find this button called the batch processing. Okay, you can also go to the menu file, let's see, batch processing here, two different access place. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to load an analysis template in. So I just load the template just saved. Okay. Yeah, it's already here. So my template. Okay, let's load this analysis template, and for the data source, okay, there are multiple options. So in this case, I'm going to use existing ranges. Okay, let's see what does that mean. So if you look at the data, I want the first two columns to be fixed in each processing procedure. So I want to select the first two columns to be as fixed ranges. These two ranges are not changed between the process, but the batch range is what we import different data into this template. Okay, so in this case, it just ignore the data identifier and the data sheet. We need to set this. The data sheet is where you put in the data. So it's the data sheet of the analysis template. So the result sheet. So when you do batch processing, sometimes you want to like combine all your analyze result into a big summary sheet. In that case, you will specify a result sheet where you want to see the result, the analysis result. But in this case, I just select none because I'm not going to create a summary sheet. Okay. After this, I'll just click OK. Okay, then you see 3 worksheets are generated. Each has this analysis, the ANOVA, repeated ANOVA analysis, then generate this final graph. Okay. So this is this example. I'll just show you how to batch plotting involving the analysis in the workbook. Okay. Now let's go to next topic, batch graph exportation. Export graph in batch. Okay. So here I have this graph, and it's plotted from one workbook. Let me first just duplicate these graphs from other workbooks. I've showed you this feature, duplicate batch plotting. So in this case, I'm going to batch plot with workbook. Okay, I just select other workbooks, and I will plot selected to individual graphs. Okay, let's click OK. Okay, so once I made these graphs, I want to say export these graphs into a PDF, like individual PDF graph files. So the Origin has this export graph tool. If you want to export graph, just click here. And say the image type, Origin has multiple options, different graph types that you can choose from. So I choose a PDF in this case. And you can also select the graph range or graph scales, the scope to find the graphs. In this case, I'm just select the all graphs in active folder, and it will list all the graphs. Okay, and you once you select to export as a PDF, you have the options to export into multiple PDF files or into one PDF file with multiple pages. So let's say I want multiple files. In this case, I'll just uncheck this box, and you can by default use a long name, okay, as the file name. So I can specify a path. Let's go to the desktop and find this batch plotting folder I just created. And you can also click the preview to check the how it looks like. Okay. So let's say click OK if you are satisfied. And so in this batch plotting folder, you can check each graph files. Okay. Okay. Of course, in Origin, you can also like dump the graphs into a third-party software like Microsoft Office. So we have these apps, send graph to PowerPoint and send graph to Word. So let's check it one by one. If I click send graph to PowerPoint, it has this pops up this dialog, and yeah, you can also like select different scopes. Like you can dump all the graphs in the project, or just the graphs in this folder, or just the current graph. Okay. So yeah, there are other settings, and if you want to know more, you can check our webinar on like a publishing graph webinar. So if you are satisfied, you simply just click send. It can send to an existing PowerPoint file, or it can just launch a new PowerPoint file and put the graphs in. Okay, then you can adjust the graphs later. Okay, you can also use this send graph to Word tool, this has a much simpler interface. So let's say we select graphs from the active folder, and we can insert a graph into Word as simply a picture. Okay, and the other settings to open an existing Word file or just to create a new one. So if I keep it empty, I will just create a new workbook, a new Office Word file. Yes, sometimes it takes some time. It's sorry, it's on the screen. Yeah, so the graphs are just inserted into a Word file. Okay. Okay. So let's go to our last example. This is an example. It's actually requested by a user. So he has this also this workbook. It's which has an analysis operation in it. He has this XY data, and he run a linear fitting on the data and generate has this the result sheet. Okay. Okay. Then he wants to export this embedded graph into a file, into an image file. Okay. But what he requests is, okay, I have more data comes in. So I have another 3 XY data. I want to put these data into the template, make a report sheet. But when I do that with batch processing, I want to at the same time to export the embedded graph. Okay, so once the batch processing is done, the graph is automatically exported. Okay, let's see how we can do that. Let's see how we can export one graph into a image file. So again, we know this export graph option, export graphs. So in this case, let's say again, I'm choosing PDF. So select graphs instead of active page. I'm going to specify because I only want to export, for example, the fitted curve plots. So I just want to export one graph. Okay. And I can just export it with its long name. Let me select a path. Again, let me choose this batch plotting folder. Okay, so this is the folder. Okay, let me just delete these files to be more clear. Okay, let's just click apply to export one graph. Okay, so one graph is exported. This is fine. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I come to this dialog theme, click this button, and I save this theme. No, instead of save theme, I'm going to generate a script from this theme. Okay. What this does is it will generate this laptop script. Okay. So instead of launch this dialog, if I just go to window, script window, and type in this line of laptop script and hit enter to run the script, it will do the same thing to export the graph. Okay. Now I have the sort of like the script to export one graph. Now I'm going to do batch processing, and during the batch processing, to process each individual data set, I want to run this script at the same time. Okay, let's see. In this case, I'm going to again to use the batch processing. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to repeatedly import into this analysis theme window, because I just put the other 3 column data into this analysis template. Okay, so the data source, I'm going to use existing XY data sets. Okay, so for import, I click this button. I go to my new data. So these 3 columns, okay. And the data set identifier, it doesn't matter, so I just leave it as this. So I just leave all the settings as it is. But here, like I'm going to add the script into this script after each process. Okay, so it just tells the batch processing that after each process, I'm going to export the graph. Okay. Let me click OK. So it will generate a file with the same name. I just click No to rename each image file. Okay, so if we go to this batch plotting folder, you will see the 3 graphs are exported during the batch processing. Okay. So I think that's all for today's webinar. But please give us a couple of minutes that we can run a poll that you can fill it out to give us feedbacks and suggestions. Thank you for attending today's webinar. Hopefully it's helpful for you, and have a good weekend.